In a short while, we're going to start getting some reaction from political parties, what their thoughts are about what they've heard the President say this evening. And we're going to start with the Freedom Front Plus leader, Dr. Pieter Groenewald, who joins us on the line. Dr. Groenewald, thanks very much indeed for joining us. What are your thoughts about what the President said this evening?
Good evening, Peter. Firstly, I want to say that the Freedom Front Plus will support any effort to try and to restore law and order in South Africa. In fact, I already sent out a message earlier today to appeal to people to stay calm. I do, however, have a problem, and that is that the President is always reacting reactively and not proactively. To give an example, he said to the people of South Africa tonight that the different intelligence structures, as far as the police, the Defence Force and National is concerned, will work together to see how and what steps should be taken to restore law and order. That is reactively. That's too little too late. These structures should have been proactively, and they should have known before what was going to happen when Mr. Zuma went to jail. Another example is that the President tonight said that he will gather with different political party leaders and so that we have discussions. He did that in May last year when we had the crisis with the COVID-19. Since then, up to now, he never spoke to political leaders. If we really want to solve this problem, then we must listen to each other on a very responsible way to see what we can do to assist and ask the people to stay calm and to solve the problem and to restore law and order. On that basis, the Freedom Front Plus will give its support, but then there must be real actions. He didn't say, for instance, how many members of the South African National Defence Force will be deployed. I would have liked to know, because then I can make an evaluation to see whether it will be sufficient to restore law and order. We must do everything to restore law and order because the people of South Africa and the economy of South Africa cannot afford this looting and criminality.
What do you think is at the root of what's happening? Because you have to first have that understanding before we can start finding solutions.
Well, it's a mix. There is a political side of this, as far as Mr. Jacob Zuma is concerned. It will be a mistake to say that it does not play around. But then, of course, it is also a mix of criminality. It is quite clear that there are some big bosses and, let me say, criminals behind the scenes working, instigating people to go and loot. I hear the argument of people who are hungry, they want food, they are unemployed. That is true. We have too many people of that in South Africa with an unemployment rate of 43%. But the fact of the matter is, if I see how shops are looted, I don't see many food that is being taken. I see it's luxury items like TV sets and that sort of equipment. So it is a combination. And therefore, the intelligence services should have known that these elements, all of it, will play a role in destabilizing South Africa because of the opportunity, because they use the Zuma situation as an opportunity to destabilize South Africa.
Dr. Groenewald, we're going to leave it there for the time being. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. That was Dr. Pieter Groenewald from the Freedom Front Plus. saying that he's a little bit disappointed that the president hasn't always come to the political parties asking for assistance. The last time he did that was last year. But he is saying that his party is willing to assist where it can. Let's now hear from the UDM leader, Major General Bantu Holomisa, retired. He joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. Your thoughts about what the president said this evening?
Good evening to you and our viewers. Yes, certain parts of South Africa are ablaze. What a pity. And the blame is squarely to be laid at the feet of the entire African National Congress leadership and their incessant and uncontrolled infighting. Having said that, the UDM is encouraged that at least President Ramaphosa this evening has deemed it the matter seriously enough to have one of his family meetings to address us about this situation. In his capacity as a commander-in-chief, he must have received a proper briefing, and it is good to hear that he will monitor the situation twice daily. However, law enforcement agencies will require strict discipline as they are entering uncharted territory with threats having been made that any means necessary will be used to prevent Mr. Zuma's detention. You'll recall when the people of some of the ANC people were in front of JZ's house. However, the UDM finds it disconcerting that the top police leadership, who ordinarily keeps the nation abreast of developments, have maintained radio silence these past 2 days. This has not gone unnoticed and does not inspire confidence in the nation, let alone the absence of police who watched one shopping mall in Soweto almost more than 6 hours. Everybody was watching.
What does that tell you?
Minister of Police was watching. Why did they not send reinforcements to at least stop the people, to say, please, guys, stop it?
How do you interpret that, Mr. Holomisa?
As lawlessness.
How do
a banana republic?
How do you interpret this absence of police in certain areas?
That's precisely why I'm saying I find it disconcerting that the top echelon police, for the first time in the last 2 or 3 days, were not coming to brief us. Where is Begitkael? Where is his commissioner? They are always on TV telling us, what's going on? There's something fishy here.
You started by saying that this is squarely about the ANC, but what we're seeing is people stealing luxury goods from shops. That's not political at all.
I fully agree with you on that. There's a lot of element of criminality. That's why I'm saying, where are the law enforcement agents? Read between the lines. But you must not be blind to the origins of this conflict.
The president earlier said this seems like the early 90s where there were sinister forces at play. Do you agree with him?
Well, unfortunately, it could not be equated with the 90s because we were fighting at that point in time, the struggle. And during that time, the government was sponsoring a violence, right? it cannot therefore be equated with that situation. The government was sponsoring a violence against liberation movements.
All right.
Unless he wants to tell us that some of his intelligence officials and the police are behind this.
All right. So you're saying you'd like to hear more from the police, certainly in the interim.
Okay.
Major General Bantu Holomisa, thank you very much indeed, the leader of the UDM. Let's now speak to the national spokesperson of the African National Congress, Pule Mabe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Your party president and the country's president has just addressed the nation. Your thoughts as a party on what he said?
Evening, Peter, and evening to your viewers. Of course, we do welcome the address by the President of the Republic, President Ramaphosa, especially the reinforcement on the need to uphold the law, make sure that the kind of lawlessness that is being seen, where properties are being destroyed, looting taking place, that such is nabbed and attended to with the kind of speed required to return the affected communities back to normality. So we do believe that the reinforcement by law enforcement agencies, including the army, would assist, facilitate the return to that kind of stability in the communities.
People are saying that this has now got some criminal elements, people, opportunists just stealing, but that it started and it's rooted in political infighting within the ANC. Is that something that you agree with?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you have seen the characterization of criminal elements having captured all of these different protests that we are seeing is true, and it must actually be understood in that way. Police have got to act against those criminal elements that are involved in the destruction of property. I mean, they are basically taking people out of their jobs. But also, we have made an appeal to communities, to religious leaders, to various other civic formations, to be able to work with law enforcement agencies, expose those that are really behind some of these actions. We need greater community solidarity. Those that are leaders in various communities, either as councillors and all of that, so that ordinary citizens or owners of small businesses do not take the law unto themselves. You would imagine that if a situation like this continues to wreak havoc in those communities, you're going to ultimately have some vigilantism. You're going to have people taking the law into their own hands. So we need our people to have confidence in the ability of the state to protect property and save lives in all of those affected communities.
But there are some figures, and some of them in the ANC, influential people who are tweeting and saying things online that the president referred to as inciting violence and that they should desist from that. Doesn't that directly point to this political battle?
Well, where they are cadres who are members of the ANC actively participating in activities that are instigating the violence that we are seeing, when the police make the necessary following up, they also have got to follow up on those that are instigating this form of violence. I mean, if you instigate violence in a democratic country and that instigation leads to undermining the peace and tranquility of others, you too should take responsibility.
When the army is brought into play, things are pretty serious. Is this a concern for you? Because the army is not trained to do policing, as we saw at the beginning of the COVID-19 story.
Well, we have made a call that the manner in which law enforcement agencies are going to be acting in the various communities where they are deployed must be in an uneven manner. It mustn't on its own create unnecessary challenges for us. They are going out there to really reinforce and make sure that we could achieve the stability needed. I mean, you saw there were civilians today pelting stones at the police. I mean, doing it, you were showing us these visuals throughout the day. So you do need that kind of reinforcement. We need to assure small businesses that are creating jobs in those communities. We need to assure those that are part of an active township economies throughout the different communities that are now facing all of this different lootings, destruction of property and all of that, that we need their businesses to be able to thrive and contribute towards the creation of few jobs that they are creating in those communities. Now, when those shops are being looted at, you can just imagine what happens, Peter. And people rely on this. People who work in the retail sector, they rely on these jobs. Now, when you go and loot from those shops, those people tomorrow will not have jobs. Now, what does that do? It then just creates unnecessary social instability in the country. So we have got to be seen, our government has got to be seen protecting the very few jobs that are being created by the retail sector.
All right. National spokesperson of the African National Congress, Mr. Pule Mabe, thanks very much indeed for joining us and thanks for your time.
No, thanks.
We move on now to the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition, and the leader on the line is John Steenhuisen. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. The president has asked political parties to meet with him and help solve the problem. Are you up for the job?
Of course, I've been trying since early this morning to get hold of the president, and my office has been trying to get him secure a call with him since 9 a.m. this morning, precisely because I think it is important that political party leaders are brought together. I've convened my national security shadow cabinet 3 times today, and we've come up with some suggestions which we believe the president should consider. It's a pity that he hasn't reached out yet. I would have thought in a time of national crisis like this he would have done so. But nonetheless, as I've said always, the Democratic Alliance stands ready to be able to play our role in bringing peace, stability and prosperity to South Africa and moving past violence and finding alternative ways to be able to resolve these issues.
What do you think can be done? You said that your security cluster has come up with some solutions. What are they?
Well, first of all, it would be a massive deployment of the SANDF into KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng province to be able to help the police, as per the Constitution, in restoring law and order there under their control. It's very clear in KZN particularly that the policing authorities have lost the initiative there, and as the president was speaking, the looting was continuing, the burning was continuing. There was nobody heeding what the president was saying, and the only thing that's going to stop that is by making sure we've got sufficient police authorities and personnel on the ground to be able to beat that. We believe that all political parties need to be convened to be able to come together to bring peace and calm to the country. And we believe as well that there needs to be a massive improvement in the intelligence capability of this policing. It's impossible to put a police officer outside every shopping centre, but it is possible through examination of Facebook and social media posts to be able to pinpoint where protesters are targeting and be able to have a far more targeted approach. I think domestic crime intelligence has been a complete letdown in this, and many residents, as we sit here this evening in KwaZulu-Natal, are watching their homes burn, they're watching their businesses burn, they're scared for their family and they're scared for their future. And I don't think they can take any sakura tonight from the president's speech. I wanted to get behind the president in a big way this evening, but I think his speech fell wholly short of what is required. People are looking for action. They want to know the number of people that are being deployed. They want to know what powers they're going to have. And we're talking about social compacts and stakeholder engagement. The president cannot even get his own party on board. You've just had Pule Mabe on. The mayor of Durban, this very city that's burning, is tweeting and carrying on as a big Zuma supporter. The provincial secretary of the ANC in that province, Mr. Mabe's own party, the president's own party, saying that Mr. Zuma should be released or people can expect more of the same. It's no use going out to find social compacts with other people when you can't get your own party in line, and that is absolutely essential going forward.
We've seen, sadly, this pattern of looting following what might be genuine protests, and then it escalates very quickly to just random looting all over the place. How can we stop this? Because clearly this is pointing to deeper issues that have nothing to do with the issues that are first being protested.
Yes, this of course started as a political protest, and it was an ANC internal battle that spilled over into the streets of South Africa. But I definitely think there's been an opportunistic criminal element that's now jumped on the bandwagon. But the genesis of this goes back to the events of last week. I think when people witnessed the fact that they could gather in large numbers, and provided they had enough firearms and threatened enough violence, as we saw outside Mr. Zuma's homestead, that the police would back off. And I think, unfortunately, the message that sent out is that, this type of thing would be tolerated going forward. And I think that's emboldened a lot of people who've conducted themselves in the manner in which they've done, with looting, pillaging, burning, stealing, and assaulting people over the course of the last 48 hours. So I think that the important thing about policing is to nip the small problems in the bud before they develop into big problems. I think that the police let far too much slide, and I think as a result of letting too much things slide, we now have a descent into lawlessness. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a match that is struck on a tinderbox of inequality, of 2 decades of failed policies that have left 30 million people trapped in absolute poverty. And of course, that tinderbox is fertile ground for the spark that we've seen over the course of the last 24 hours. And my real worry is that this is now going to spread over into other provinces as well. It's in Gauteng and the Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal province predominantly now. But as people see the scenes unfolding, I'm sure it's going to encourage criminal elements in other provinces to jump on the bandwagon. And we're soon going to have the entire country aflame, and that's got to be avoided at all costs.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen joining us on the line there, saying that he's been trying to get hold of the president since this morning. He says that his party's shadow security cluster has come up with a number of solutions, and one of them is the deployment of the South African National Defence Force, which the president has now done. And he says that his security cluster will be working together to gather intelligence and to try and deal with some of the wanton looting that's taking place